How are you? Hope you are doing good. This is MC Wamaji, karibuni sana. And we thank God for the gift of life. So, kuna kitu nilikuwa nafikiria kusema this evening, this afternoon. Hope you are good where you are. And karibuni sana. And I met a story mahali, so I was like, okay, tunaweza discuss his story. Maybe inaweza kuwa benefit to somebody. Amemsaidia mahali. And I met it through somewhere. Na nikaona ni vizuri kuiongea because it's something that can help you also. And besides so, unajua tunasemaga good governance, serikali mzuri ndio inafanyanga mambo ikuwe sawa. If you are being led by bad governance or bad people, absolutely you mess yourself. Utajipata mahali maybe wewe hukutarajia, mahali wewe hukutaka. And the decision that the government can make, it can affect your dreams, it can affect your programs, it can affect your decision. Like for example, in this case, let's talk about our country, Kenya, back in Kenya. The more the government is making worse decision, the more the people, they blow up their mind. The more the people thinks about beyond or even going against their career. In this case, for example, things considering education. So you know why? For example, the government is interfering with the education system. And you want to know whether the government yenyewe, the education is paying. If you want to know whether the education is paying, or the people are relying on their careers they did in high school or in universities or colleges, is you take a statistic of 100 people or 1,000 people. In this case, for example, if you go to the streets, uchukua statistics of 1,000 people or 100 people. Let's take in this case 1,000 people because out of 47 million, out of 50 million people in Kenya, if you take just a sample of 1,000, the sample must be very little to determine the Kenya watu wanapitia. But with that, you can get an overview of what people are going through. In this case, hebu chukua watu 1,000 and out of 1,000, absolutely utapata na mtu alisoma na wengi hawakusoma. Out of 1,000. Na in between 1,000 people, you ask them what they do on the daily basis or what they do to put their meals on the table. In this case, ask them, what do you do for a living? The statistic be the name, what you do, and what you studied in high school or in college, if you manage to. Uchukue just a sample of 1,000 people. Na waulize, wewe chenye unafanyanga sahi na chenye ulifanya kitambo. Ama whatever you doing right now is equivalent to whatever you studied in high school or college. I'm sure 97 to 90, no, let me not give 97, but in this case, let me say about 80 to 90% is that the people will give you a different opinion of whatever they studied or whatever they are doing is totally different with whatever they did or they did in universities, in colleges, or according to their papers. That is one way of showing that educations, as per now, especially back in Kenya, probably, I don't know whether it's affecting the whole Africa, but most of the time in Kenya, the education is not much paying. What people are doing or they're investing in, for example, in education, is to ensure that at least somebody can get a knowledge to understand the algorithms of life, to understand how life goes, to understand what life can give or what life can end up to. Why am I saying this case? Because even I myself, or even at least many people, what they do right now, or they are doing to feed their families or their relatives or their to raise a living or to get a living, it's totally different with whatever they studied. That shows that education, but it doesn't mean that they are not much educated. They are much educated, they have knowledge. It's only that the field that they studied for, when it comes to marketing, a job market, either way that the job is not offered, or either way there is limited in market, either way the field or the company or the organizations that you can apply for, they are not even existing, or even you don't have an idea of where to start. And that is the reality of life. Now, what you find that people are investing in education, yes, and besides so, people have not stopped taking children or their sisters or their brothers back to schools. People are still standing. But I think like to know that if you can train your child or your siblings or your daughter or your brothers on how to do something else, because you find that things that are paying right now are totally different with whatever you can do. For example, zile vitu ulikuwa unafanya full time, for example, kama niyo masomo ulikuwa unafanya full time, kitu yenye ulikuwa unafanya part time unakutaka hata ndio ilikulisha zaidi. Whatever you used to do part time is what even making you to it's what is feeding you right now. And whatever you took it seriously and you give it 90% of your time back in high school or back in university, it's not even adding a sense of in your pocket. So you find that you have to squeeze yourself further to ensure that at least you know more. And so many, this is the case because you find that there are so many people who are jobless. That is the truth. And even those who are they have job, they are still counting themselves as a jobless because maybe the standards of living has gone up. The salary that they are receiving cannot even satisfy the needs, and things have gone higher than expected, or they are not expected. So good governance or serikali mzuri inaweza fanya watu wakuwe na maisha mazuri. Serikali mbaya inaweza fanya you can make yourself a decision. Take an example of people who are coming to work in Gulf countries or in the Middle East. They have left their families, or in which case, look at people like wasichana wenye wanafanya housemaid and all those. They have left their families, their siblings, not because they are willing to, but because the situation cannot accommodate them together. So one has to squeeze himself or herself a further distance to feed their family or to keep their family at least on a comfort zone. Yeah. Because in this case, take a look on this. You find that other countries, for example, in abroad or in the Middle East or in those countries, They have no scarcity of job opportunity. In fact, they are seeking for more opportunity. Don't mean that those countries are more wealthier. Yeah, sometimes they are. But you find that because of the governments that they have, because the other countries which are more rich, they have, and I don't think there's a country that is richer which have bad governance. I don't think. And I don't mean that there's no government without corruption or even without the beast or without the bloodshed, but tunakutanga at least government imejipanga, watu wao hawalali njaa, watu wao wanaishi vizuri. For example, in this case, why do you think people demand to go much in US, in UK, in Europe, in Australia? Why do you think? Or even here in Middle East or something? It's because the governments or the ruling of those countries, they are better far. They have organized. Corruption is there, yes, but you cannot find corruption beyond 16%. Other countries, like for example Kenya or in Africa, you find that corruption is at 80%. So almost everything, especially for example right now, owning a job in Kenya right now with a salary of 50,000 right now, I don't know what you have to do. Yeah, you have to sacrifice a lot, you have to give a lot. Yeah, you have to do more corruption. No. So you have to corrupt a lot to ensure at least you secure the job. For the ladies, you know what normally happens for the ladies most of the time. Msichana akitaka kazi ama madamu akitafuta kazi mahali, of course anavua ndio apate. It might look funny, but that is what it's going on. And because he or she is there, for example, she is there, and maybe she has a family, she has her kids, you have to feed the family, itabidi anaivua. Which is still part of corruptions. So things really change. So poor governments can also lead to more bad decisions that you can decide in your life. I give an example of people who are working abroad, for example, going far away apart from their families in the Middle East or so. I think 40 to 50% is not their wish, but because the situation have forced them to do so, you have to. Because you cannot look at your families dying of hunger, without food, because you are there. You have to give out yourself a space, wende watafutie, ndo wakuje wakule. And something I came to realize is that if you wait for the government to help you, especially back in Kenya or maybe in Africa, inaweza chukua muda sana for a government to work for you or to assist you. Maybe what they do, for example, if they can ruin something, we call it health system. If they can interfere with the health system, if the government itself can interfere with the health system, for example, in this case, let's talk about SHA or SHE. I don't mean if it's not working, but in this case, at least you can hear from people, 60 to 70% of people are saying it's not really working. And those maybe 30% of people say it's working. Is it the way they have been given by the government, or few people have gone through the system? Or they have passed few people to the system? If the government can ruin a health system, can interfere with the health system, what do you think? What do you think the government can do for you to support you? If it can overcharge free services to you so that you cannot be able to access, for example, things like passport, things like national ID, linked like birth certificates, linked like marriage certificates. They are being overcharged. Sometimes you heard that even the documents are not found. They are not found. If those services that are made for free, they are not found for free, and you are there ruining that, the government will help me. I don't think it's back in Kenya or in Kenya or in Africa. Have you seen that statement of Kaguta Museveni, what he has said? He is shocked, at least, that many Ugandans have never touched a million at the age of 64 years. Quote that one. He is very shocked that there are so many Ugandans at the age of 64 who have not touched a million. That is not funny. But for him, it's funny. In this case, we are not here to blame the government. But what do you think when the person says so? I remember there was a time Uhuru Kenyatta was asked the price of a bread, and he said the price of a bread is around 500 Kenya shillings. And people was like, okay, 500, so you mean everybody own 500, can get a 500 every morning, because for every bread you have to. And by the way, it's not making sense. You know very well you don't pay even your employees a salary of maybe a 15,000 Kenya shillings. Maybe you pay them 2,000, maybe 5,000, 10,000, and you expect that person to raise, it's not adding up. Because rich people cannot even understand the language of average people. Let me not use the word of poor people. Sometimes mtu wa tabaka la juu hawezi elewa mtu wa tabaka la chini. And that's how it is most of the time. Because if somebody is saying that how can't you afford 500 Kenya shillings for a breakfast? Do you know what is 500 Kenya shillings for a breakfast? That is supper or foods for 1 week to other people. With the family, not even single person. Very touching story. Indeed, it's very, very funny story. So whatever I came to realize is that when you choose bad government, when you choose good government, when you choose good government, you choose good people, you choose good life, you choose best decisions. When you choose bad governments, of course you choose bad people. Of course you choose hata sijui. Unachagua tu masekete. And I don't think we shall go to that time where we used to enjoy too much. I think the season that is here ahead of us is, ni season sijui itakuwaje. Because I think even before, for our parents, even though money wasn't much enough, there was something to do. And people could depend on lands, livestock, to feed their families, to feed their relatives. But in this case, some mashamba, you have to purchase them with more money. And so many things, Unless God come and intervene this generation, actually, things are bad. I'm not saying about before that you cannot invest in education, so you cannot even pay school fees for more, for your kids or whatever best for your kids. You just keep on doing the best, you never know. But he can maybe look for a job market outside the country.